This is a free download from the BBC. For more information, go to bbc.co.uk/podcasts.
Hello, this is Iain Lee. This is an extra podcast. We don't normally release a second one in the week, but on today's show, the 10th anniversary of the London bombings, 7/7, well, we heard a couple of incredible stories that we found. I guess touching is the word. Is that what would you? I mean, certainly when I spoke to Paul, I had shivers going down my spine. Anyway, we heard from Phil Duckworth and Paul Dodds, who are local people who were both far too close to the bombs when they went off, and we thought that maybe more people should hear their stories. So, have a listen to this. It's not packed full of the usual laughs and bants, I'm afraid. This is quite a straight one, but we think it's pretty important that you listen to this. 10 years ago today, 4 men took a train from Luton Station with the intention of never returning. When they detonated their bombs at Aldgate, Edgware Road, Russell Square and Tavistock Square, they killed 52 people and injured more than 700 others. One of them was Phil Duckworth from St Albans. He was standing next to the bomber on one of the trains, and as emergency workers passed him on the track, they said, "This one's gone," which gave him the energy to get up and save his life. He spoke to our reporter, Justin Dealey.
It was my normal commute, so I got on the underground at Farringdon, and it was hot. It was a busy day. I was slightly late that day, so I wasn't in any particular hurry to get to work. I was just sort of going with the flow. I don't really remember much about the commute at all. I remember I sat down. I was reading my book, which is Dan Brown's Angels and Demons. When we just after Liverpool Street, I get up and get to the door, and I was stood at the door, my hand on the sort of partition, and then there was a massive white flash ringing in my ears. Honestly, I just couldn't work out what was going on. I thought I'd fallen off the train and maybe got electrocuted or something like that. I could remember for a while and until I came round and I was actually on the tunnel floor in the dark. I was sort of laid on the rails, and it was at that point I realised, obviously something bad has happened. Maybe I did fall out of the train. I was sort of barely conscious, kept coming in, drifting in and out. And then I was trying to get my way to the station. I could see Aldgate Station in distance. All I wanted to do was get to the platform. And it was probably 20 minutes or so before I got enough energy together to try and stand up.
It's an absolute miracle you're still here today, because you, of course, were standing next to the bomber. When you were blown out of the train, all of your clothes were blown off as well. So you were literally there in your underpants on that track. How did it feel when that person said, "This one's gone"? As a human being, somebody who's going through something like that, how did that make you feel?
Purely survival instinct, but this was like this gave me something like a sort of an adrenaline buzz or whatever, and I was like, I'm going to prove that guy wrong. This is how bad it is. They think I've died, so I've got to get up and do something. So. And
just how different do you live your life today? You've got 2 lovely kids. I've just seen your kids next door. You seem incredibly happy. Just how different are you as a person now?
I mean, I think it is a case of, it does made me sort of stronger in many respects. Just sort of viewing life, the positive side of it, spending time with the kids, the family, and being able to just still have a good lifestyle, live in London, go and travel and go to work in London, and not be afraid.
And in a bizarre way, have you made friends from that day? Because if you've been through something together like that, only a small group of people have actually experienced that. So do you still keep in contact with people from that day?
Yes, I'm sort of part of a sort of quite close group of people that were either from my train or some of the others, and we actually meet up every year and have a meal and celebrate all the things we've achieved since 7/7.
Paul Dodds was from Flitwick. He was on the Aldgate train. He spoke to me on the anniversary of 7/7.
Well, I was travelling from Flitwick to XL to meet Prince Charles for a celebration, and it didn't happen.
What were you going to see Prince Charles for, Paul?
I'm involved with an organisation called World Skills, where we train young people in vocational skills, and I'm the trainer for plumbing for the Olympics in vocational skills.
Wow.
And it was a welcome back and a celebration for how well we did in Finland in 2005.
So this was supposed to be a very, very special day for you, a day of celebration.
Yeah. Yeah. A very big day. Yeah.
So you're on the train. Tell us what happened.
Yeah. I was on the train. Well, I got the train from Luton. And I actually stood next to the bomber on the platform in London. And there were people pushing from behind because it was quite a busy train because the train was late into Luton and otherwise everything would have happened earlier. But people were pushing from behind and I went the next set of doors up and probably the best decision of my life, actually. So like with seconds to go, I just moved up and went in through the next set of doors. And we got to Liverpool Street, and I'd been stood in the centre of the train, and I moved towards the door with a glass panel above on my side, and we just set off from Liverpool Street, and I saw this flash, ducked down, and that was it. And then for about 5-10 minutes, I thought I was going to die because you couldn't breathe. Everything had gone out of the train. All the air had gone, everything. It was not a good time. Not a good time.
That's putting it mildly. Are you all right talking about this, Paul?
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things about the therapy, and I went to the counselling in London that was provided and stuff like that, and that was great. And one of the things was talking about it. I'd just finished doing a first aid course about 2 weeks before, and one of the things I really feel guilty about was on the day I couldn't do first aid. I just couldn't do it. And it was really, really bad from that aspect. It was very, very difficult. And then we got evacuated from the train, walking down the tunnel, and then, as I spoke to you 5 years ago, saw this guy, looked like he was bleeding from head to toe, and that was one of my lasting memories. And 5 years ago, you put the link together to a guy called Philip, and I did see him last night on BBC News, actually. And that was a gap that, I didn't think that guy was going to live.
This is Phil Duckworth from St Albans, and it sounds incredible. His clothes were blown off in the explosion, and but people thought he was dead. He was lying on the tracks, covered in blood, and people thought he was dead. Well,
he wasn't laid down when I saw him. He was stood up. He was just like a zombie walking down the tunnel. If you could imagine a horror movie like a zombie, he was like that. He was literally like that. And this, like you said, this guy, no clothes on, just walking down the tunnel. Everybody walking past him, coming the other way. So obviously, they're giving him up for, dare I say it, being dead. And it wasn't a pretty sight at all.
If I ask anything, Paul, that is too personal or you don't want to say, then please tell me, and I won't be offended, of course. It's just this is the first time I've spoken to somebody who was so directly involved in that day. And you say you saw the flash. Did you know what it was?
No. All I saw was a flash go off, and then it was like a ball of flame or whatever came through, and I just ducked down behind the glass panel, and it rolled straight across the top of my back. And then obviously the carriage was full of glass from fluorescent lights and stuff like that. But you couldn't breathe. There was no air in the carriage at all. The windows to the side of me, they were all covered in a yellow powder. I told everybody to get down onto the floor. People were wanting to break windows, and I was saying, don't break the windows. You don't know what's on the outside. Because you don't.
And how long, Paul, were you in the carriage before you got taken off the carriage?
Seemed like a lifetime, but it was probably less than about 10 minutes.
And were people talking? Were they crying?
No.
What was it just silent?
Really quiet. The only time that there was people got distressed was after the smoke and everything cleared inside the carriage. Somebody looked out the window, and obviously in the centre, because we was like on the left track, on the right-hand track, there was bodies on the track that had been blown out of the train. And then people started to get quite upset. Yeah.
And did you speak to anybody, or were you kind of in your own little shocked world?
I was in my own little world.
Yeah.
People came running from the next carriage down with water and things like that, and obviously running towards the injured. But in the carriage where I was, pretty much people just stayed where they were, probably in shock. And to be fair, I didn't realise I was suffering from shock. When I come out and we ended up above ground, I rang somebody up and I said there's been a bomb on the train. And the guy at the other end said, "Oh, well, don't worry about that. Just get here and you'll be fine."
Sorry.
My mind just suddenly went, "Oh, I've got to get a taxi or something to get to where I need to be."
I bet.
And I saw a policeman and they took all my details and everything else, and I jumped in a taxi. And when I got to the XL Centre, there was paramedics waiting for me at the XL Centre.
For you specifically?
Like
they were waiting for you specifically?
Because obviously by that time, in the 5-10 minutes it took to get to the XL Centre, people hadn't realised what it was, and I was on my way, you see. So people met me at the door, and there was paramedics, and they took me to the toilet, managed to get me washed up and everything else best I could. But I didn't realise I was suffering from shock.
When did it hit you?
About 15 minutes after people started making a fuss.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
And it really was. My friends, my World Skills friends, were tremendous. I'm still friends with them today, still do the job today. People have been absolutely superb. I will say that. It was a day I'll never forget. Never forget.
And you mentioned that you'd had therapy. I'm guessing that was offered to everybody who was involved in the bombings.
Yeah, we went down to London. You was offered cognitive therapy. To be fair, when the anti-terrorist squad, a couple of days later, came to my house and 6 hours of questioning. They came to my house, took all my clothes away, everything else. But they offered some advice because I was going on holiday a couple of weeks later to Turkey. They offered me advice on where to go and where not to go in Turkey, how to protect yourselves in the market and on the transport in Turkey, because obviously there's a terror threat in Turkey then, and there still is. How to protect yourself. And then they said, like this counselling. And I went to the counselling, and the terrorist police or the security services, they kept sending you letters to say, tomorrow this is going to be on the news, tomorrow this is going to be on the news, this is going to happen. And it was very good because I went into quite severe depression. I was on tablets up until about 2 years ago for it because it was quite bad. And I still get depression, because sometimes life deals you a bum card, and it's very hard to deal with. And I find it very hard to deal now with situations that get quite stressful.
So is situations separate from that incident 10 years ago you struggle with, whereas perhaps before the bomb you would have been able to cope with them? Yeah. Nowadays the wheels come off the trolley. Yeah. Every time I have a problem, the wheels come off the trolley, and I get very, very depressive because I just look at the bad side of life, and sometimes I need to look at the good side of life as well. Have you got family and friends around you, Paul, that help? Yeah. Got family. My wife, she works at Harlington School. She's 100% behind me. My kids are superb.
You couldn't ask for better things that way. They don't talk about it a great deal. The last 2 days there's been quite a bit of stuff on telly, like the Song for Jenny and things like that, which was quite good. But I don't tend to watch a lot of it. I'm rather glad that I'm out this morning because I don't get a lot of it this morning.
I was going to ask, Paul, does stuff like this, does us banging, obviously we're talking about it a lot and it will be everywhere, does that make it easier? Does that make it worse? Are you indifferent to it?
People need to know what happened that day. People need to know what happened that day. There were some misguided individuals, and I will say misguided. I'm sure if they knew different, they wouldn't have done what they did, but they did do what they did. At the time, I worked at Banfield College. I was teaching down Bury Park. The people that I was teaching down in Bury Park at CYCD were very supportive, and they were quite shocked at what happened. So people in Luton, in Bury Park and things like that were as gobsmacked as anybody else as to what actually happened.
I've got to ask, Paul, did you get to meet Prince Charles in the end?
No.
Has it still not happened?
He was, how should I say, he was whisked away.
Oh, I bet.
To somewhere safe.
Oh, I bet he was in a bunker somewhere. And you've not met him in the 10 years since?
No. In 2011, through World Skills, I managed to go to Buckingham Palace for afternoon tea with Prince Andrew.
It's just an incredible story, Paul, and I really appreciate you sharing it with us. You've kind of made it real again, and I hope that. Well, I hope that this has helped you, and I certainly hope that it's not made things worse or brought you down at all.
No, and above all, we've got to remember our security services are doing a magnificent job. Our forces do a magnificent job in trying to stop it all. And they've put their lives as well in this cause as well.
Paul, thanks a lot.
Okay, no worries.
Well done, thank you, mate. Cheers. There we go. Paul Dodds. He was on the Aldgate train.
I feel a letter to Prince Charles coming on.
I think we have to write a little letter to Prince Charles, don't we? I do feel a little bit. I feel a little bit guilty talking to Paul, because obviously he wanted to talk and we didn't in any way force him or anything like that. But I kind of feel like it's his business. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I can't be any more specific than that. And obviously he's completely willing to talk, and we would never have coerced him or anything like that. That was his decision. But I feel like it's his. I feel like we've really pried into someone's private business. But
we approached a number of survivors, and I've got to say the majority did not want to speak, and that's their prerogative.
And good for them. Good for them.
There are others like Paul who feel like it's almost a duty. It's almost the reason, not the reason why they went through it, but if some sense has to come from it, it's about raising awareness, I guess. But
good for them.
Such a tricky thing to talk about.
Thanks for listening to this free download from BBC Three Counties Radio, your local radio station for beds, hearts and bucks, on FM, AM, digital radio, and online at bbc.co.uk/3counties.